produce and consume, where does it go to? Where does every kilowatt hour that we consume, where does it go to? So you may remember from your old physics class the law of energy conservation. Everything goes into heat. We are generating heat. This room is generating heat. This heat ends up, either heat radiation goes back into space, or most likely stays in our biosphere. And it will actually warm our oceans, melt the ice, and create heat island effects where in the cities it's warmer than outside the cities. So yes, we humans contribute to global warming. Now, funny enough, when people talk against coal, they use the term what I just said before, and saying, okay, you coal, you're emitting the most CO2, so by nature you're responsible for global warming. And in fact, there's the famous 97% number. All the scientists out there agree to it. Now, is that true? Oops. One of the most cited scientific studies is this one from Cook in 2013. Cook analyzed, I'm sorry about the numbers, but 12,000 abstracts. They actually passively looked at 12,000 scientific abstracts. Okay, fine. Then they found that 32% endorse anthropogenic global warming. That means that humans contribute to global warming, which 2 slides ago I just confirmed. Now, 2/3 didn't have any position. Some said not at all, and some say they're uncertain about it. So this is what they came up with. No position. They implicitly endorse it. So they assume that yes, they believe that humans contribute to warming. And then of course there's some that explicitly endorse it. And then there's some 9 out of these 12,000 that said, actually, humans are responsible for warming for more than 50%. So, 64 people explicitly endorse that humans contribute to 50% or more than 50% of warming. No mention of CO2. I am part of 97%. So when someone talks that there's scientific consensus that fossil fuel CO2 is causing global warming, that's wrong. And you can actually, I read it myself. I didn't believe it. Okay? There is no consensus on global warming caused by CO2. The IPCC is the famous organization covered by the UN, funded by all of us. And they themselves say there's no robust trend in annual numbers of tropical storms, hurricanes, over the past 100 years. In summary, confidence in large-scale change and the intensity of cyclones is low. Likewise, confidence in other extreme winds is not there. There continues to be a lack of evidence of this, and thus a low confidence regarding the sign of a trend in the magnitude of frequency of floods or global scale. That's the IPCC saying. Somehow we hear something different in the news and in the press and in the sun. Another interesting one. Oops. In 2001, recent analysis said that severe local weather in few selected regions, there's no compelling evidence for systemic long-term change. In 2013, there's limited evidence of changes in extremes associated with the climate variables. This is all directly, all the sources are there, exactly what page you can read yourself. 1 year later, changes in many extreme weather and climate events have been observed since 1950. Some of these changes have been linked to human influence. Well, hold on. You said everywhere before you said no. And then on page 7, somewhere in the front, you say actually there have been extreme changes in extreme climate. So what is happening is that there's policy summaries made of the data that the IPCC presents itself. These policy summaries are written by politicians, and they make interpretations which are actually wrong. Then you go into data, it's actually itself wrong. I'm not saying the weather's not changing. I'm not saying we don't have a bad influence on the environment, but I'm also not saying, I am saying that CO2 is not the main cause for global warming. And it's time for the coal industry to start fighting. This, by the way, is thousands of scientists who actually signed actively to withdraw from Paris. So while before you saw 12,000 abstracts being analyzed, these are thousands of scientists saying withdraw. So where is this consensus, 97% consensus? It's not there. Yeah. Okay. By the way, this is one thing that you may know. You double the CO2, you have more biomass. You have more biomass, you have more food, which happens to be quite good in a world of growing population and less space. Weather has always been changing. This is a temperature change. Since the past 11,000 years, we came out of a very cold time 12,000 years ago. That's, by the way, when humans started to develop, because otherwise we wouldn't be here where we are today. We have seen ups, downs, ups, downs. Here's the modern warming. And somehow everyone says that modern warming is all our fault. Sea level rises in Germany over the past 150 years. I don't see any acceleration in sea rise levels. They are rising. This is the CO2. Now I go to Norway, and somehow the sea levels are falling. How is that possible? Because land masses change. Land falls and rises. So just because sea levels change, it doesn't mean that actually the sea changes, but land also changes. From geology class, we may remember that from geography class. Yeah? This is the Maldives, by the way. I don't see a problem for the Maldives right now. Of course, they're getting money from this, right? So they have to fight against or for global warming policy. Now, this is a sea level change, seems to be accelerating. What happens is that this is satellite-based. This is actually measured. And here, they are adjusting, so assuming that the land wouldn't fall, this is how the sea rise would be. Oh, hold on. They're literally fudging the number and it appear that it's getting wider. That's not the case. So, ask yourself, how much of the warming is natural versus man-made? Number one. Number two, how much is actually non-CO2 warming, such as our heat? Then ask how much actually is our CO2. We agree the world has warmed by 1 degree in the past 150 years. We also agree the 1 degree has helped us. Now, the IPCC proposes we have 1.5 to 2 degrees before we go into disaster. That means we have a budget of another ½ degree or 1 degree before we all gonna die. How logic is this? It doesn't make sense. Why is our industry avoiding the subject? No one is speaking about this. Anglo Glencore, just recently you saw. I don't know, it doesn't affect us. This policy out there, but it does affect us. You see what happens to Europe. It increases power prices. Who is going to pay for this? The poor person who cannot afford it. I can afford a few more cents for power. So the subject is global warming. Actually, the subject is the CO2. Gas was cool. I'm going to skip that part. Oh, actually, it's important. One thing. When people talk that gas emits less CO2 than coal, that's also not true. Gas emits less CO2 than coal while burning, the blue one. Here's coal, here's gas. But the indirect CO2 emissions during transportation and during production makes it on par with coal. So you see this in the gas lobby. Emissions from shale gas power generation are half of that of coal. It is wrong, because they only consider the emissions during combustion of gas versus coal, but not during production and transportation of gas. So we should be together with the gas industry, not against each other, but we are, kind of. So, for Indonesia, the logic concluded, fossil fuel remains the best choice for your country. But you have to invest in renewables in a sensible way. Okay? Indonesia is best suited to serve, of course, the growing South Asian market. We talk about the market in the next session. Don't let the Western world dictate your climate policy, your energy policy. That's the worst you can do. It will be taxpayers' money wasted. We have so many environmental problems which need to be treated, and by taking tons out of CO2 from the atmosphere is not going to help anyone, other than just wasting money and paying someone. Some banks are getting money, and consultants are getting money, and all these things. Clean up your production, your transportation, and your generation of power, because there you have a huge issue to deal with. And I believe the coal producers of this country need to step up. You're the biggest exporter in the world. You need to start taking the role of what the West used to do. You have to start doing that. The large producers in Indonesia need to step up. And of course, check the facts. When you start reading something about power prices now, you start thinking, what was that? That doesn't make sense. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lars, for the very interesting presentation, Lars. We have a few minutes for Q&A. Any questions? I like to check the facts and source, the last slide of yours. Okay, have you, I was wondering if you have seen our national energy policy. So what do you think?
I think I have actually a slide on this, so I can just go back and we can put it here. That's Indonesia's sort of fuel mix for the next 10 years. And you can see how coal is important, because you see here the renewables. And here you see gas and iron oil. So I think Indonesia understands that coal is going to be the future for the country. Indonesia also understands it needs to invest in diversifying its source of power, and that makes sense. However, I believe that this is not all environmentally driven. This is policy driven and actually driven by the international law. Indonesia has to look good to do certain things or to comply with requirements from the law. And I think that's what we have to be careful about. Because in the end, you are spending taxpayers' money for doing this. And whatever you're adding here, you will have to add here. Every kilowatt hour, I shouldn't say every, but the majority of kilowatt hours you're adding in renewable power, you have to add to conventional power. I think that's the main message.
Thank you. Anybody from the floor? Ya, Bu Putri from IHS Market. Ya, tolong yang di tengah, Ibu yang di tengah.
Hi, Dr. Shenika, Diana Putrialan from IHS Market. I just wanted to ask, earlier you said that Indonesian coal producers need to band together and I guess make a firmer stance in terms of making it clear that the coal industry is not as environmentally damaging as it's being made out to be. But I think there are a lot of environmental groups here who would argue that the local coal industry, not all miners, but there are miners, that the way that they are mining, so on and so forth, is detrimental to the environment here. And that in the past few years, I've seen a huge push in NGOs, expressing their concern towards the environment among local communities in Kalimantan and in Sumatra. I mean, clearly coal has become sort of the bogeyman in this whole climate change situation, but I'm just wondering how realistic it's going to be, your suggestion, because governments in the Western world and just everywhere, have managed to be so scared by this climate change, talk of climate change, coal is dirty, people can't tell the difference that the steam coming out from a power plant is steam and that it's not actually smoke in the way that people think it is. So I'm just wondering how realistic the suggestion is, and if there's something else as well that needs to be done that maybe hasn't been brought up.
Okay, thank you for your question. First of all, let me be very clear. Coal is a huge problem to our environment, and we need to invest in cleaning up our coal production and our coal generation and coal transportation. And I'm actually arguing to divert this money that goes into decarbonization into these issues. So I'm not saying that coal is not a problem. I'm not saying there's not environmental issue. Huge problems. But coal, the money is drying up for coal. So what is happening? The Western money is drying up. The Western money tends to be cleaner money. Western investors tend to more care about the environment than Eastern investors, unfortunately. So costs of investments going up, dirtier money is coming in. That means money that doesn't care about the environment as much, and that's bad. Okay. And now your second part of the question: how realistic is this? You know what? I'm not going to change the world. I know what I'm saying is fact, And I know anyone who actually would take the time to study this would agree with me. I'm very confident because it's all there. Physics is there. It's all about science. Very simple, actually. But am I going to change the world? No, I'm not. But I think it's time we need to speak up. And the fact is, coal is coal, and we are producing coal, and we are exporting coal. So why are we hiding behind this global warming thing? We have to argue, stop this decarbonization. We need this money to clean up our mess. That's what needs to happen.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lars Senikau. So if you guys want to learn more on what Dr. Lars Senikau presented, you can learn or read Dr. Senikau books. Yeah, what is the title? The Economics of International Coal Trade. So thank you very much for your interesting presentation, Dr. Lars Senikau.
As verbal, on behalf of the organizer, Mahindra Media gives a note of appreciation.